Why your purpose changes as your awareness grows. Why your purpose is a living energy that changes as consciousness and your consciousness evolves. Now, if you are a healer, a coach, a therapist, or someone that is more consciously led, or even a soul-led entrepreneur, and if you at the moment feel as if what you're doing, or what you feel you were supposed to do feels at the moment flat, you feel maybe more exhausted, out of alignment, and you maybe feel as if what you thought you were supposed to be here to do, or what you used to do, feels out of alignment, right? Maybe what you thought your purpose was, or even the roles that you used to identify, maybe they just don't feel right anymore. Now, one of the most important things, I think, is to recognise that your purpose isn't a static destination. Lots of people, want to know what their purpose is, and they have this thing as if it's one thing, and then once they have that thing, it's like a sense of control. So it's the ego that drives that. When you want to control something and hold on to it and have a fixed something, it's more coming from that. It's like the nervous system looking for something to grab onto, right? And that's very different when you feel just naturally in a state of flow, in a state of alignment, and there is a big, big difference. And this is why when we know ourselves more, and the more we do in our work, and the more that we work on things like a nervous system and self-regulate, but also get into alignment of who we truly are at our core, and what I believe is your soul essence. Purpose, is a lot easier, but there's lots of things that can impact and can take us out of alignment, right? But if we think of your purpose as an energetic resonance, right, than an actual physical role or a career, or a title or a modality. That's another thing that people get lost in. They think their modality is their purpose. Is when you think your purpose is this resonance, and it's like an energetic frequency, right, that happens when you are in alignment, right? And you're in alignment with your state of being and your essence, the essence of who you are. And I do also think, purpose evolves when your essence is blended with your experience and your skills, your life skills and things like that. So that is why when you think when your awareness and consciousness actually shifts, right? Things can start to feel as if they don't fit anymore, or you just feel off, and it can feel very icky, right? Now, and that's why then at times, sometimes we just feel and we just know our purpose is completely shifted, and it's like we shift quite quickly, and then we think, this is what I have to do. But there's other times that it's like, it's almost like you're moving out of, and you're moving through a sticky, like a change. So when we're changing and we're evolving, sometimes it's not just big, clear and a big leap. Sometimes we have to go through a process, and you can feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? Or I thought I was supposed to do this, and what's happening? Or it can feel very overwhelming, and you can feel all over the place, but that is part of the process, right? And it's why when your awareness and consciousness moves and evolves, right, you expand, you grow, and all those old identities, or some of those old identities, or old roles, just do not feel alignment, in alignment. And it feels like, and sometimes that's when also certain things don't work out because you're not supposed to work out anymore. So sometimes, and I've been there, I've done it, I've had a t-shirt where there's things you're trying to make fit where you are right now. And no matter hard it is, it does not feel right. And when you try to do that, it pulls you down. And that's why in business it can be very hard sometimes when these things happen, because if you've been serving clients, if you've been doing certain courses and certain things, and that happens, you can keep wanting to fall back on what you've already been giving people and doing, and you can have all these kind of narratives going through your head. No, but I'm supposed to do it, I have to do that because I've always done that, and who would be letting down and things like that. And of course there's some dynamics in business, there's certain things that you should try and keep your commitments and things like that, but you can really rob yourself in your own well-being when you're trying to stay stuck in an old identity or an own business or an old model even, or that can be related to what you're doing that no longer fits, and that's a big challenge. Now, that is why lots of things in our life can keep us out of alignment with our purpose, because there are lots of things that can also influence that energetic resonance and interfere with that energetic resonance. And if you think about, there's lots of things that can get in the way sometimes, and it can be old winding. And sometimes we think as we evolve, there's less and less wounds, and of course, but sometimes then as we increase in awareness and our consciousness increases, what happens is the wounds, other wounds that we don't recognize or we never thought were there, are actually start coming out, and it's other things come to the surface. So they can start playing out. You can also have, during our involvement, we all have in life, our life path, we all have different experiences that happen just in the life's journey. So you can have new trauma, new grief, new things that happen in your life that are challenging, that get in the way. And also if you think about, we think about emotional pain and trauma and things like that, but also things like physical pain, health challenges. These things can also interfere with how we're feeling about ourselves, how we're trying to manage things, and we can get into our head too much and lose sight. And, it can also be to do with relationships, particularly unhealthy relationships, or people who want to keep you in that old identity. They want to have a fixed view of you and put you in a certain pigeonhole. And if they keep trying to pull you back out of that, well, that causes problems. If you don't have supportive relationships, if you don't have enough a support team around you, that can be a huge challenge sometimes when you're trying to move in alignment, because you can have lots of things going on. So your environment and different things can impact, right? And that's why as you move, you're evolving in your purpose. It's like everything. Sometimes, yeah, you feel it in your bones that you have to shift quickly and move with that, go with that. The universe and whatever's sending you signs, you feel it and you move. There's other times where when it feels huge, it feels uncomfortable, and you're not really sure how that's going to evolve, but you need to move, start moving out of what you've got into something new. It's about baby steps. It's like there's certain stages in a life that little steps are the most powerful steps, and then there's other times it's leap. The problem is sometimes people think they've got to leap all the time, and leaps are not always good for the nervous system, and that's a really important thing to remember. I remember years and years ago, it would be the early 90s, and I read Suzanne Jefferson's, is it Jefferson's book about feel the fear and do it anyway. Now, the only problem with that book, even though it's a good book about facing your fear and facing maybe limitations or things that are keeping you small, for someone that at that point, if you are going through a lot of trauma or health challenges, or your nervous system is really compromised, overexhausted and overwhelmed, if you start just trying to throw yourself into every fear and face that, that can be very re-traumatizing. And it's like there's lots of things out there, and people make suggestions, therapists, coaches, healers will make suggestions, but they don't always get it in the right context. And it's like everything. Certain things are useful at certain times in our life, and sometimes it's not the best thing. And I done the wrong thing. I was trying to then push myself on so many levels at a time that it was not about pushing, and it was not about jumping in and facing all fear and all, because my body had went through so much mental, emotional, physical trauma, right? I had all sorts of things that impacted my nervous system. I had mercury poisoning, I had lots of other things happen. And it was a time that my mind, body, emotion needed safety, needed support and soothing, right? And this is why, it's really important when you're moving in purpose. Purpose is something that should feel aligned and flow and easy. If you are feeling as if there's a lot of resistance, or something makes you feel uncomfortable, or it feels like a duty, it's not your purpose. And if something starts to feel like a duty, or that you're doing it out of obligation, then you have to look at it. Now, I remember just before COVID, I had been going to make a big decision about my stress coach training. There were certain things just didn't feel aligned anymore. And I just knew that in relation to how consciousness was changing, it was like I had evolved a lot through years, but I didn't really know how to take my model into a different way of being and how to put that out there. It was like as if I had a wee bit of a block there. I knew there was lots of things that could really help a lot of people. But another level, I was shifting and evolving quite dramatically, right? And then because COVID came along, there were certain things I did because I knew it could really, really help some of the fundamental basics. And I think no matter how much you leap forward, there's always basics that are really, really important and can help everyone, and we all need to be reminded of basics. But what I'd done was I kind of kept doing certain things that was my old purpose, was my old passion. And I think I was so stuck in my head, I didn't know how to move out of that. And that can happen sometimes, that there were certain things I did, and then what happened was it became, I let some of my training and courses drag out for students a bit too longer than I should have. People, would want extensions and extensions, and I gave it too much, and it was depleting my energy at such a deep level, because most of it was out of alignment, and I had other challenges going on. I had other things going on that I was trying to, sort out, that was just not getting sorted out. And one of the things that, when we have a block about something, sometimes we're so fixed in the way we think that it should work out, or we think we have to fix it, right? Instead of, and that's an analytical aspect, that's the ego running the show, it's the mind. But when you can get into the soul and align with in here and get back into here, and that starts guiding you rather than the ego and the mind. And of course, there's part of the ego that is part of how we survive in the world. But things are evolving and things are changing. So it's important to remember that purpose change, it does evolve. It evolves in different ways. And, there's lots of things about your purpose that can be the same. There'll be traits and there'll be parts of it that are always part of your purpose. Some people come into the world that always have a healing impact on people, that everyone they make, they feel safe, they feel supported. And there's also sometimes people, when we go and we're attracted to certain courses, certain careers, we think it's our purpose, but it's actually just a step on the road. It was something at that point that helped us be more purpose-led. And sometimes, people say this, and I say this a lot with clients, coaches, healers, and therapists. They were attracted to something because it felt more nearer to what their soul wanted than what the job that they had. And lots of people use, for example, sometimes go into holistic and spiritual, go down training and that, because they're trying to get away from the 9 to 5. They're trying to get away from work that feels so misaligned, and that appeals to them so much. But then once they do things, they realise they've learnt a lot, and a lot of it's helped them be more soul aligned and live a more maybe mindful or spiritual life. But they realise sometimes that that aspect is not exactly what they're here to do, but it helps them. It's just part of the path. And this is such an important thing to remember, that purpose is evolving. And the more that we evolve as individuals, and the more that we let go of our identities and not who we truly are, and let go of the masks and let go of the distortions and the patterns that other people project onto us, we also put on ourselves, that we become more in alignment with, with our purpose. But that purpose is ongoing. It's not static. It's not a final thing, right? Living a purpose-led life is something that you do by just being in alignment every single day with your heart and your soul. And if you can understand that, that can make a big difference. Now, yeah, when you're creating a business, or when you want a specific career and you're confused by everything and you're trying to work out what is most aligned, and that can get really in your head, and you need support. And I've created new sessions called Soul Path alignment sessions, that are one-to-one sessions. So if this is something that you would like some help, just to kind of help you even bring you back, what I do is help people back into more alignment with their heart, their soul, themselves. Because when you bring yourself back to that, it's easier to then bring more in you. Now, one of the things I would say with Soul Path and Life Path, Soul Path is a lot of things that you want to express and experience in life, right? But if you cannot express your soul and you can't express the essence of who you are, you're going to find it really hard to live in your purpose. So that can be really helpful. But one of the things I'd like to add, one of the things that I've just, and this is an example of how the universe gives you signs. I had been wanting to create, a kind of certificated course for quite a few years in relation to some aspect of archetype, but working using archetypes from a practitioner or coaching perspective. And through the years, even in my stress coach training, I did a lot of relaxation therapy, and I did a lot of stress management training. But interesting, even though the business was called Stress Coach Training, I didn't actually offer coaching certificated training, and there was a big reason, because it was, I'm the main trainer. And in the past, I had lots of situations where I brought other people in, they never turned up or whatever, trainers or things happened. And then you realise, when you do a coaching program, traditional coaching program, there's a lot of works involved in students doing practice sessions, and you've got assessments and that, which can end up a lot of work. And I'm someone that's never liked to charge too much. And when you're just doing things, and sometimes some aspects of the business can be really challenging, and you're thinking, how will I do that? And it's a feasible way without maybe too much. I always felt it was maybe too much bandwidth for me, and I do it. But I also recognise there was a lot of these, like, for example, I always felt life coaching was very outdated. And and I've been studying, I started doing life coaching, like, even doing courses with people and getting coaching. We're talking, like, I've been in the personal development, for example, and self-growth, studying in that industry. Even since I was a teenager, I bought lots of things that were done by coaches. So I was very consciously aware of the coaching approach. And I became a coach very early on in my career, and then I'd done different types of coaching courses, and I went and done a life coach, and then later on that was more at university level, and it also included spiritual coaching. But even the spiritual coaching model, when I trained in it, I recognised right away there was a lot of things I would include that was missing. And I felt that the life coaching approach was very outdated, right? And I always felt that, there was a better approach to things. So something happened recently. Well, it happened, something happened 6 months ago. And one of the things I always got was students and this was before this year, but I always had people asking me, did I do coaching training? And I said, no, it's not actually coaching training. And I did say my advanced stress management or my, course, I do, I do some coaching skills, teach some coaching skills and things like that, but it's not like a full coaching training, if that makes sense, right? And that's why I encourage a lot of people already coaches to do some of my stuff. But I was approached 6 months ago and someone had asked me about did I do life coaching or whatever, and I'd been talking just to do with the conversation the person is. I had said to them, well, actually spiritual coaching would probably suit you better in relation to work, because she was a healer, how she worked, how she thought. And in my head, I'd been thinking, to do with the archetypes and things like that. And I always knew that the way I worked in my coaching and things is I work through archetypes. And I think it's a powerful way. So anyway, recently another student that is bought off me for years and worked with me for years had reached out about spiritual coaching and a certificated training. And after that conversation, something just clicked, because quite a few things had happened over a few weeks. And it made me realise that, okay, I think the universe is trying to tell me something, because there was different things happened to do with me recognising that I really should be doing, a certificated training, but how did I do it? And something just clicked for me. And there was lots of things recently in my business that just felt as if I was putting a lot of work in for not the greatest reward, and things were just getting a bit challenging. I wasn't as clearly thinking, and I did put a lot of it down because I'm waiting for, I've got, some things that I need surgery, even though I do not believe in trying to get surgery when you don't need to. This is something which appears to be quite major. I thought, this is telling me there's things here, because there was all different signs. And the fact that two people had asked me about this, and other people had been talking about other things to do with archetypes, did I do certain types of training, I suddenly realised something just shifted in me. All right, okay, this is probably what I was supposed to do all along. It'll make sense now, and so what I have created, sorry, I seem to have got off a wee bit, but what I've done is created now, I'm doing a soul-led coach and mentoring certification using an archetypal alignment method. So it's my method, but it is teaching people, coaching how to be, give their clients more soul purpose-led coaching, but using archetypal approaches. And it's not just about helping the client more effectively and more efficiently, because one of the things that I would see is a lot of coaches dragging things out with clients that didn't need to be dragged out, because they didn't have good conscious awareness, they didn't have certain skills, they couldn't recognise patterns. And the last thing you want to do, if you're just about money and you just don't really care about your clients and you want to drag it out, well, but if you're someone who genuinely wants to help people and you don't want to be faffing about, but you also want to, you believe in depth, because one of the biggest things for me is always about depth and standard, like not standardization, but effectiveness, safe and effective practice. So what is evolving for me right now is me going back to offering, because I'm a natural teacher, that's part of my purpose, is that training. And I realised where I had started going off, but then how different situations had happened to bring me back into alignment. The universe gives the sign, situations happen, and sometimes the more something feels off, or you think, that should feel a lot easier. What's going on? What's happening? Why is that no longer working when it used to work? Is because the universe is saying, no, don't look there. But I had got so stuck in my head that it had to be done a certain way, and that I didn't have the energy to do it that way. And I'd also been in a situation as well where because I know I've got an operation, I kept thinking, oh, I can't commit to anything now. I can't do another training program at the moment, because what if I've got to take time out? I quickly realised that if I created the course the way that I would, if I had to even take a month out, I had other people that I would be bringing in to help with the course that could do some things in the course that would be really helpful for people and help, and and how things work out. So trust and recognise that just because you might feel, sometimes you can really feel sad or disappointed something is no longer working or doesn't feel alignment, and there's a grief and a loss with that. But just around the corner is something else that is going to ignite you and bring you back into alignment. It's just recognising what is not out of alignment. It's like when you go along a journey, and if, for example, if you head out and, I remember at one time I was I was a Cub Scout leader. I wasn't a very good Cub Scout leader, but anyway, I was more like, the kids would more like come to me when they were crying and needed consoling than anything else, but I was not exactly, I remember we went out camping and to look after the kids. I didn't know, I hated the cold, I hated doing the camping thing. But I remember going out and doing orienteering and going out and having to map out things and use a compass, right? And we all know when you go out, it's just like when you get directions, some people are really good at directions and don't get lost, and some of us get, lost all over the place. It's the same in life. Sometimes we can just take that little wrong turn, and then we're so in our head that we think, no, we're on the right path, we'll find it, and you keep going. Where some people are thinking, no, right, okay, I have to go back, or I have to realign, and that's the key. It's just thinking, right, okay, that's not the way to go, recognising where it's a stop sign or where there's something that is getting in the way. Now, I'm going to share something. I remember someone said something to me many years ago, and she said to me, oh my God, Eileen, yeah, it was actually my manager in a counselling organisation I worked, and she said to me, you seem to make, if there's going to be a challenge, you'll find it, and you go, it's like you think every challenge and everything that happens that's difficult, that means that you have to break through that challenge. It's as if when something happens, you think it's your role and your job to face that challenge and to just try and get through it. And I'm looking at her and thinking, what do you mean? She says, sometimes it's a brick wall, and you've just to go round about the brick wall, or you have to find another way, or that's telling you that it's a stop sign, you've not to go there. I thought, oh my goodness. So sometimes we're like that, we're a wee bit stubborn, or we're so used to having to meet. I had a lot of things in my life that were so challenging that I think that I then thought all of my life, everything was going to be challenging, and then what happens, we can create more problems. And even trying to, in relation to our purpose, we make it harder than what it needs to be. Okay, so remember, purpose it's something you feel, and it's something that drives you. It's something that motivates. It's an energy. It's a resonance. And if your purpose does not feel in alignment, not in flow, feel stagnant, it's no longer, there is something, you're not in alignment, you're not in your purpose. Okay, that's the simplest way to say it. And if you need help, make sure you check out the offers. If you're interested in the new certificated course, or even you're just curious about it, I will share a link below. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.